we're going to launch pretty much right into it. ISI Federal, just a little bit background on us. We are business development specialists. We help connect the dots within the federal government with small businesses, mostly small, medium-sized businesses, and help them compete with the big boys. Carl is with CapturePlanning.com, and Carl helps companies learn how to create winning proposals. We're going to be talking about some specifics that he has developed over the course of time with Carl. Why don't you talk about that for just a second, and we'll get back to that in a moment.
Okay, well, what we mostly do is provide information that helps people figure out how to go about winning their proposals. So it's things like process documentation and templates and online training, that sort of thing.
Cool. And for the other folks from Halts, Boozes, and Pal, they help with the compliance side of things. So we help kind of on the front end. Carl helps also on the front end. We work real well together because Carl spends his time helping to develop those processes so you can respond effectively and with super great proposals and what those super great proposals should look like so that you can actually steal these things from your competitors. And then once you get it, you got to make sure that you're in compliance. We also on the front end, and that's where Andy's group helps out a lot. So we certainly love to work with all these folks. Why we're doing this, most folks have an issue with driving their GSA sales. That's why everybody's here. This is specifically for GSA schedule holders. Now, we do cross over into other federal buys that are outside of GSA, specifically because not everybody buys off of GSA. But we also want to help you identify those obstacles to your success and get rid of those by gaining exposure, getting some of that insider information that you know is out there and just don't know exactly how to get to it, and also access to resources so that you can fill the gaps in places that you need help. So that's primarily why we're here. Real quick, this webinar would be the best I ever attended. We asked this in the front end of this, and Glenn said if I could learn more about the procurement process, that's great. We're going to talk about that, what that process looks like, and how to influence that. And Shyla, it assists in winning, if we can help assist in winning the opportunities. Kat said, if it wasn't so early, I love it. She's from California, so we appreciate that, Kat. Mark from MedTrust, help find key contacts. Cannot stress this more. Many folks actually ask this question as well. And Isaac Hagens up in Ohio, to learn the nuts and bolts of writing a good proposal. Mike Huey, how to get written into the scope. All of these things, very, very important. And everybody here, if you're not familiar with some of these terms, we'll kind of go through those and how to effectively, if you compile all these pieces together and then are providing a substantial and excellent proposal, you'll find that you can win. You can get ahead of these things and get the federal business that you're expecting to do. So why are you all here today? To get smart about the process, getting ahead of the RFP, positioning yourself to win, and developing the winning proposal. That's why we're all here, and that's what we're going to be concentrating on. Before we get started in that, though, I want to talk about what typically happens after a company gets their GSA schedule. And some of you are painfully aware of it. Most fail, and when I say most fail, when we first started ISI Federal, I went to some friends at GSA, and I asked them, these are top folks at GSA, and I said, what is happening there? 79% lose their schedule. That's after you did all the work. And for instance, 2,300 of the 21,000 since 9/31/2011 were removed from the schedule. That 48% don't get a dime. 31% don't reach the $25,000 minimum. And I say this all the time. If you can't sell I don't care what you're doing. If you can't sell $25,000, that's a categorical failure, and that's why they wind up being removed from the GSA rolls. And as you know, it just doesn't money doesn't fall from the sky. This also includes, so you know, 8A's, service disabled, veteran-owned small business, SDVOSB, that's what that stands for, women-owned small business, veteran-owned small, whatever. It includes all those folks after they get their certification of some sort. 5,000 of the 9,000 8As do not get a dime. Most of them graduate after they're done. It's a 9-year program, right, if you're familiar with the 8A program, and then they disappear. The cost of this is extraordinary to small businesses. I've seen it for more than $175,000, depending on what they've invested in over the course of that time. So what we want to be able to do is help you identify the best place to spend your money, to put the resources to play so that you can play in this space. So why does this happen? This happens because everybody sees this incredible market. There's $425 billion, and that's not going to change appreciably. Even if they cut some from the federal budget, this is not going to change appreciably because the federal government still needs to operate. There's about 2.5 million contracts every year. 23% is supposed to be set aside for you as small businesses. And they buy everything all around the world. There's 85,000 or so buyers that have the ability to purchase from you in 470 agencies, and they are the #1 customer in the entire world. That's why everybody's here. That's why you got your GSA schedule. That's why you're doing what you're doing, is to be able to get access to some of this money. But what happens is most companies don't understand the market. They see the dollar signs, but they don't understand the market. And they really don't create a plan. They may go get their GSA schedule and say, okay, this is the way that I got to get in there. Or they may have other schedules or other contract vehicles, but they really don't have a plan on how they're going to go out there. And then the other piece is they don't dedicate the resources. Most folks in small businesses don't have the resources on staff initially to be able to go after this work. And that's one of the reasons why it's so critical to know folks like Carl, and to know folks like Andy, and to know folks like me, to be self-serving. But the way that these things work is to get these resources in place, and then know how to measure success before the dollars start to roll in. That way, you're not just throwing money out there, it's just throwing stuff against the wall. If you can measure success and effectively go after your marketplace, you will succeed. You do need a longer timeline. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I know you've heard this. If you've been involved with any of the GSA schedule sessions, you wind up knowing that they're saying, hey, you need to dedicate time, dedicate time. I can't stress that enough. It doesn't happen overnight, and it also doesn't happen by accident. You have to be proactive in going out and getting this business. So most companies dip their toe in, and guess what they do? A lot of times they'll wind up giving it to a rep. Are they going to give it to their ACE rep? Of course not, because that would inhibit some of your main source of revenue. They usually don't give it to the steady eddies either. They'll give it to somebody who's underperforming. And this is a recipe for disaster, because what happens is you wind up giving somebody an incredibly complex, incredibly long cycle sale. And they're really destined to fail. So they dip their toe in, and eventually they give up, and that can happen within 6 months or 9 months or a year, sometimes even more than a year. So you have to know what success looks like before you start and before you are willing to invest this money. So what happens is after that leaves the rest to split. This is the dollar volume for recent sales for last year for $38.5 billion. The average for contractor holders, which are succeeding, not less than 25,000, but the average for the rest of everybody else is $3.3 million. And I know that's why everybody's here, because you want to get your share of that. And you certainly want to start to peel away some of the money that is going to your competition. So just realize that just GSA sales is about 9% of the total government spend. So leveraging your GSA schedule is one thing, but don't ignore the rest of the federal space and how that happens, because your competition is utilizing other contract vehicles, whether they're IDIQs, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, in case you don't know what that means, and BPAs, or blanket purchase agreements, and they're leveraging those as well. Your GSA can help you get in the door even if they're not using your GSA schedule. So that's one way that you also leverage your GSA schedule. So getting back to why we're here, we're going to talk about getting smart about the marketplace. When you need to understand how your market operates for you, not for everybody, because it's way too large to kind of look at everybody, but look at specifically what's happening within your world. In every time this happens, there's very few things that I own, but one of those is the key decision clusters. One of the things that we do is we take a look at the market a little bit differently, and these key decision clusters operate between three people. First, you have the project manager or program manager. You have the technical representative, or COTAR or CORE. There's a lot of different names out there for those, but the technical representative, and then you have your contracting officer. And these folks get together for a particular project. And it's important to know that each one of these people have different roles, different buying motives, different needs, different ways of making their decisions. Very important to know, because if you're selling them the wrong way, it's like wah, 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 Charlie Brown. They're not listening to you. You've got to know what they need from you. Here's some of the things that we'd like to point out. First of all, the program manager or project manager, they drive the initiatives down through the organization. It could come from the president himself, all the way down through Congress. It could come from Congress, could come from somebody else, but could come from the administrator of the agency. But they're responsible for the initiatives. There's a lot of those out. You have green, you got cloud computing, you have security, cost-cutting, cost-saving measures that are out there, double-edged swords so that you know, because they don't want to give up their budget. They're responsible for some of the political initiatives, huge political initiatives happening right now in healthcare, obviously, right? So they're responsible for finding those new ideas and new ways of being able to operate. They're not particularly interested in doing things that are cutting edge or bleeding edge, but they are looking for those new technologies and new ideas that you can bring to the marketplace. They are influenceable and being able to help craft the scope and the requirements. Some of that is driven by your capabilities, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And they want to get the job done right. The most important thing, though, is for you to tie in with those initiatives that they have so that they can tie it in for their management and upper management and all the way up through the agency, and you want to help them look good. Their key buying motive, pretty much everybody in the world wants to look good, right? And this is your job with them. So help them look good. The next person is the technical representative. They're busy. They usually report to the PM. They bridge the gap between the PM and the CO, which means that they're kind of responsible for taking those technical requirements and make them make sense to procurement. And we're going to talk about procurement in just a minute. They're risk averse. They really don't generally want to try new things, but they do report to the PM. So if the PM is kind of interested in something new, then they may be interested in trying something new as well. But they assist in assembling these technical requirements, which include the standards that they're after, some of the similar purchases from their agency or maybe other agencies that we'll look for. Another place is certifications, and this is a place where you can kind of weed in, and we'll talk about this and how to get ahead of that RFP and how to influence the scope. And one of those ways is certifications, identifying the certifications, and the technical representative can help you can help them get that injected into the scope. They assist in mandatory requirements. They help with those requirements, and the job is to help them look good. Very similar to the PM, so the same thing happens there. So now we get to the contracting officers. Now these folks are busy, and believe me, we're talking to them. They're talking to us. We're exchanging emails, and they're working on Saturdays and Sundays and things like that. A lot of these folks have a lot of paperwork that they have to move. They will not teach you on how to do business with them. I think you guys would agree. And they're risk averse. They don't want to try new things. They want to make sure there's safety in numbers. They'll look for people that have done it before. They'll look for that past performance. They are not experts in what you do. Very, very important. They don't care what you do. No offense to you and all the greatness that you bring to the marketplace, but they really don't care. They're experts in moving paper and selecting that purchasing mechanism so that paper can get moved. And it's not to degrade what they do. That's their job. Their job is to figure out who meets this requirement, how to get the best deal for the federal government, and move that piece of paper from one side of the desk to the other and make sure that stuff gets procured. They do develop the contract documents, and sometimes they administer the contract post-award. It depends on your project as to whether or not they'll be involved after that. They want the fastest way to purchase, and the most important thing that they want is they want it to be fast, safe, and easy, and you need to make them feel valued. This is a core purchasing reason why people build relationships with contracting officers, how you can get to them. Again, make them feel valued and make it fast, easy, and safe for them to be able to procure. Make sense? Now, these key decision clusters, they happen all over the place, and this is important to know because it will affect the way that you approach your marketplace. So you have these three folks, and they get together for various procurements the same way that your procurement is done. These happen all over the place all the time. And now the larger the procurement, the more complicated it is. You may have some more influencers, but these are the primary drivers of the procurement itself. So again, each one has a different perspective on this particular project, and they have different needs and buying motives. And these happen all over the place, all over the federal government, all the time. And these projects are assembled, and you have these people. They're constantly moving, they're constantly forming, and they're constantly creating new opportunities throughout the space. And this goes throughout. You have every agency and sub-agency, and these people will pop up all over the place if you're looking for them the right way. You'll have contracts with these different people, and you can start to see these people bubble to the top. These are what I call high probability targets. These are the people that help us focus on exactly who the primary buyers are. Getting back to that one question earlier is, who are the key contacts? These are the ones that bubble to the top. Any one of the 85,000 may be presented with an opportunity that may be suitable for you, but some of these folks are more likely to be able to get those over and over and over again. And there's good reason for this. One is they may have a relationship with a vendor, or they may have already done procurement in a certain way at another agency, so they get tasked with it. They do try to have efficiencies of scale, of being able to say, okay, can we use this verbiage from other contract, from another RFP to do this, and somebody that has expertise in that. So here we have these folks all over Department of Transportation and, in fact, all over the place. These targets are all over. They're everywhere in every single agency, and every time we look for them, we find the ones that are most responsible for what you do. This is why, this is the key targeting that we like to use to have the high probability targets to go after those folks. So these key decision clusters, again, they have different roles, different objectives, different motives, but they're all influenceable if you approach them in the right way. Every one of these folks are looking for people like you to help them understand what it is that they're buying and help them make the best decisions in the federal space. Any questions about these? Again, if you could pop in your chat, if you want to have it, you can put a question in. Let's see if we have any so far. I don't have any questions yet from there. No chats are there, so I think we're okay. Any hands raised? You can raise your hand in that panel as well. So glad to answer your questions. All right, no questions. We'll move on through the next part. So who has influence? The administrator, obviously, of the agency. They positively have it. Top-down selling always works. You have your program manager, your project manager, your contracting officer. We've talked about these folks, and the technical representative. Each one of these folks has influence. Today we're going to focus on the contracting officer for just a few minutes, and then we're going to get into some pieces. Now, remember, they want safe, fast, and easy in being able to create their procurement. If you can do that, you'll win. So here's some of the things. Your political cover. They need to have political cover so that even if it's a simple thing, they don't want to get caught with not having some buy-in from above that this is a good decision. They need technical cover that you really can do what you say. They need pricing cover, and they want to make it easy. Make sense? So we can do this with our approach. If you've heard of selling to veto or top-down selling, all these things are part of that approach. You don't have to go to the President of the United States, but get some coverage from above that you're the right kind of you're the right kind of company to be able to do work with. And there's ways to be able to do that in your business development approach. We're not going to talk about that a lot today. But then we have your proposal. When you're formulating your response to those technical requirements, that comes from your proposal. And also your pricing cover. That comes from your contract vehicle. If you do all your pieces right with your GSA contract, you can use that and make it a nice package that you can give to them and say, here you go. Here is the best solution for you, the best way to procure it, the fastest and easiest. We got your technical cover because we've got a great proposal. We've got great capabilities in there, and we'll be able to help you get to where you want to go. So one of the questions is, how can you find these people? This is the million-dollar question that I love to answer, because we can take a look at how this works. Step one, get smart about your marketplace. Identify your market, identify your competitors. Let the market determine your buyers. This is very important for you, because guess what? This is contrary to everybody else that's talking about it in the small business space. How many of you folks have gone and done the sessions, the greeting sessions, where you'll sit down in front of 4 or 5 buyers through the course of the day and be able to interface with those? I call it speed dating. Matchmaking is another way. And this is where they'll say, okay, you want to get into a specific agency and kind of pick an agency or two. The problem is, if you're just picking an agency or two and you don't have the background of who's doing the buying, and you don't have an understanding of how the competitors are operating in there, you're at a significant disadvantage. You could be banging your head against the wall for 2 years and not realize that the competitors are so entrenched, or they're utilizing a contracting vehicle and they don't even use GSA. Some agencies really don't go to GSA first. They'll go to chess, like Army. Army will go to chess first and then go to GSA, potentially. Or they may skip GSA altogether and then go to a secondary form of a blanket purchase agreement, or they'll compete it within a couple of vendors, just similarly as you would with your GSA schedule with a few vendors. So again, don't just look at how they're driving you. They have a process determined for you to go through, and that process is involving people who don't make decisions. The people that we're talking about are the buyers themselves, the ones that are responsible for making the decisions to buy. Those are the people that you want to listen to and have your relationship with. I'm not saying ignore your SBA folks. They can help you if you give them the information they need. So real quick, we're going to go through some of the components that we use to be able to find these buyers. This happens to be IT security purchases. Again, we're talking about $9.4 billion worth of IT security sales throughout the course of a year. So who are the folks that are doing this, who are winning these kind of things, and can you compete? You have almost $250 million with CSC. That's not all CSC does, but just IT security. They're the ones that are winning the most in the IT security space. So if that's true, are you going to be able to compete with the likes of these guys with $54 million? Most likely not. You want to gear yourself up so in 5-6 years from now you can compete with that. But in the meantime, you need to develop a strategy so that you're flying under the radar and you're going after some of those. And I'm going to show you a couple that do this right in your sweet spot. Let's look at these guys. BPSI. They've 523 contracts. The largest is $740,000 and for $34.5 million. That's one agency alone, the Army. One agency. So these folks were in under the tent, and they kind of influenced that. They weren't even doing IT security, but they started when somebody said, hey, can you do? And the answer is always yes to that. So in identifying your market, let's look at a couple of these folks. We have 174 contracts for $5.9 million. Love this. Largest contract, $166,000. CSC doesn't even care about that $166,000. But how much would that affect your company if you were putting those kind of dollars, $5.9 million, in your bank instead? And the same thing happens with JDG. 150 contracts for 2.2. The largest is $274,000. Again, they really don't want, they don't even want to compete for that. The big boys don't. Their threshold is $750,000, $1 million, sometimes $2 million before they really are willing to spend and invest the time. This leaves some really nice sized contracts for you and your company to be able to get involved with. Again, looking for that sweet spot, the ones that would be very beneficial to you that are flying under the radar. Let's talk about some of the agencies we're talking about. Most people know CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid, right? Look at the dollar volumes that are associated with this. $341 million. So can you really compete with that? Probably not, because they have some very entrenched people. But what about some of the other ones? Food and Nutrition Service, the Maritime Administration, Millennium Challenge Corporation, Office of Thrift Supervision. Did you even know that that exists? Again, $394,000. I wouldn't sneeze at that. Largest contract's $180,000, flying under the radar. The whole agency's flying under the radar. U.S. Marshal Service. Most of us know that from the movies and television shows, but we're talking about some of the smaller agencies that you can gain your foothold in to create that past performance. That's one of the things that you're going to need. And here's some places that you can do that. Again, over and over, these smaller agencies are places that you can play, and they're not getting pounded with people trying to get in either. One of the best ways that you can figure this out is by looking at your specific competitors. And what we always like to do is say, what kind of competition is out there? You're not going to believe this, most likely. $7.75 billion were less than 5 competitors. That's not Fed Biz Ops land now. That's not GSA Advantage land even. This is 82% of the contracts out there were competed with less than 5 competitors. And the vast majority, if you look at it, more than half had no competition at all. How does that happen? Same thing with the number of contracts. 84% of the contracts competed with less than 5 competitors. This is the same. If you think about it, your procurement people in the federal government don't want 50 competitors any more than you do, because that means they have to respond. They have to look at 50 responses. So they're going to figure out a way to make it. Is that fast? Is that easy? It's safe, but it's a pain. So if you're looking at the buying motives of these folks, you're going to help them with their core buying motive and making it easy for them. And here are the folks. These are the people that matter the most to me. I call it the who. Here you have Don and you have Matt, and these folks are buying millions of dollars in IT security. And oh, by the way, Department of the Army, that's a pretty large one, right? But what about NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission? So those are the folks that I think make the biggest difference. And they're the folks that I want to spend my time with. Whoever is buying is who I want to spend the time with. I don't want to spend the time with a whole bunch of other people, just the people that are buying. So where does this information come from? It comes from GSA reporting, from GSA Advantage. It comes from individual agency reporting. You can find the agencies at usa.gov if you want to take a look at the agencies and dig down into that. It comes from FOIA requests from Fed Biz Ops, where you can take a look and see who the people that are buying, and independent research that we do, and connections that we have, where we're asking the question, who does these things? And that's how you get to know who's buying for these folks. So step one is to get smart about the marketplace, identifying your market, identify the competition, and let the market determine your buyers. Step two, go after the competitors. Specifically, who's buying from your primary competition? If you know that Brenda did 8 contracts with your primary competitor, then you have one of 2 things that you're going to do. You're either going to walk or you're going to formulate your response against that. In fact, I'm going to pull it. Do you want to talk about that now, Carl, or you want to talk about that when I launch and get that over to you? Is that something you want to hone in on right now? Still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm thinking about it. I think we can do it later. Let me when I pick up it, I need to lay some foundation and process and stuff, and then we can use that as an example.
Yep, because I think the reason why I love Carl's input on this is because even if something is baked for your competition, that doesn't mean that you can't win. You can win with a superior proposal. You can win by positioning yourself great against your competition. But if you don't know that Brenda is primarily in your camp with your primary competitor, it's very difficult to create a response about it if you're not familiar with what's happening in that. And that's one of the things that Carl will go about. Now, if Brenda is buying from your competition to the tune of $387,000, I do think that you would prefer to have that in your bank account than your competitors. If not, then you're in the wrong place right now. But if you talk about the types of agencies, take a look. The Bureau of Land Management, $1.6 million. Again, that was one large contract with John. And if you're asking a question of why there's 4 contracts and there's only one number, some of those were $0 contracts, which means they could be positioning themselves with additional procurement vehicles so that John doesn't have to put that out to bid for everybody. And that's one of the ways that you're going to find that these things get placed or competed in a different way so that it never hits the street again. And you will never know what's happening out there. So you need to have a relationship with John. And we also provide phone numbers. Most important thing, being able to connect with these people. So getting ahead of the RFP. So you know there's a market for your company. You know who's spending the money. You know who's buying from your competition. The buyers will go to who they know. Very, very important. Believe me, it's the same way in the government as it is outside the government, is people buy from people they like, and your job, your primary focus in life is to get them to like you. That's your job. Once you get them to like you, you will get out before it comes out. You'll understand their primary processes and initiatives of what's coming down the pipe for them and how you can position yourself for that. And you can know how you're measuring up against your competition and whether or not you even have a prayer of being able to win, or if the incumbent is too entrenched for you to be able to get in there for you. The most important thing is all these things enhance your winnability. When we're talking about the RFP process, starts with relationships. If you can get in there and start to influence that scope, influence decision makers so that you have the capacity to be able to get ahead of that RFP. So, rule number 1, if you didn't influence the scope, somebody else did. Somebody else has been in there and has influenced that. Sometimes that influence can go back many, many years. Sometimes they don't even know. Some of the replacement people may not even know how that scope got put in there. There's a lot of change happening in the federal government right now, a lot. There's a lot of the contracting officers that are retiring, about 30%. This gives you influence into that account potentially. And that's one of the reasons why it's so, so, so important to be setting yourself up. And number 1, if you didn't influence the scope, somebody else did. Here's where you can look for that influence from your competitors within the scope of work itself, looking at the past performance. What are the past performance requirements? If it's 10 years of past performance and you only have 3, you have a problem. Same thing happens there. If they're pressing it for certain certifications that only they can have or only very few companies have. So those are the types of things that you can do. These are also the places that you can start to inject that, to say, hey, you need to have past performance of this caliber. You need to have these kind of people that are responsible. Your resumes may be required, things like that. And the evaluation formula itself. And we're going to talk about a couple things. I'm going to hand this over to Carl because all this is starting to dovetail into what Carl's going to talk about and being able to say, okay, we have our business development folks. We're out there. We're shaking the trees. We're seeing what's falling. We're trying to get something happening out there, and this is how you can do that, by leveraging those relationships. So positioning yourself to win and getting ahead of our RFP and influencing the scope. Leverage your relationships. You cannot possibly leverage a relationship you don't have. The people that have to like you in order for that to work. So getting ahead of that, making sure that you're laying the groundwork. And this goes to being able to understand what success looks like before the money starts to roll in. You cannot leverage a relationship you don't have. And oh, by the way, you're not going to get it from a speed dating session or even a phone call. You've got to spend your time developing and cultivating those relationships. If you approach them, you've got the right people, and you're talking to them at the right time, and you have the right message, chances are you're going to have success in this place. So leverage those relationships. Provide sample scopes of work. They may not ask you, give it to them anyway. Have them ready. Have them part of, you should have a one-page capability statement, but you should also have a multiple page that has these kinds of scopes of work, and tailor that scope of work to that individual when you're presenting things to them. Even if it's cold, present it to them. If you know they're buying this 10, 15 times a year, and they've been doing the same thing over and over again, and you can do it for less money or a better process that may save them time, or maybe being able to replace someone else. Make sure you're inserting your certifications, whatever sets you apart, anything that sets you apart, and inserting your past performance, even if it's private sector past performance, making sure that they know that you have a grip on what's happening. But I'll tell you, past performance in the federal space follows the agency first, even the sub-agency. If somebody's done work in that sub-agency, they're going to get preferred treatment. If they've done it with the overall agency, let's say it's FAA. If you have FAA experience, specifically with air traffic control, that's best. Then FAA experience overall, and then Department of Transportation, and then federal government, and then others. So you can see where you are in the food chain just by breaking down the agencies and where they're working. So inserting your past performance is important. Responding to RFIs and questions for RFPs. All those things, very, very important, because you need to make sure that you're getting your name in front of them. Even if you don't win, it's important to do it. And responding to those RFIs so that you can submit alternative solutions, and even in the RFPs, you can submit alternative solutions. There's several folks that I know that have the ability to be able to say, okay, you ask for this, but I can give you this, and it'll cost you less, but it's better profit margin for the company. And it saves them the federal government money, because they spec'd in something else, but they said, oh, this has all the same requirements, maybe we can use them. And there's a method to that madness, all of those things. So that's how you can go about influencing the scope and getting your information in there. And you can call it baking, you can call it whatever you like, but that's where we go. The other place is influencing the grading of it. Now there's best price or quote with lowest price technically acceptable. You make sure there are qualifications in place, and make sure they're yours. Even if they're going with lowest price technically acceptable, make sure that you're injected there. Make sure you have some level of verification in place. I got shot 4 years ago by not making sure that, well, we asked for these qualifications. They said they had the qualifications. They said they had the certifications. They were lying, but they still won because they said they had it, and there was no verification in place with the contracting office. Value-based decisions in the grading, not everything is based on price. In fact, most stuff is not just based on price. Make sure the experience and past performance are in there, and make sure you know which ones are favoring your competition, and suggest how they should measure the quality. How can they make sure they're getting the best value out of that? Sometimes you will have a price to technical response ratio, the technical response and the business response. Usually the price response is part of the proposal. You have your technical pieces are in place. Make sure that, sometimes it's 4 to 1. 4 points for your technical and 1 point for your let's say it's 400 points for your technical proposal and 100 points for your price. And that's one way you can get around that lowest price piece, if you can get them to do a value-based proposal. So now we're going to talk about developing the winning proposal, and I'm going to pull up Carl. I'm going to transfer for the reins over to you. Carl is the founder of CapturePlanning.com, and what they do in helping companies understand the best way to go about that process. You got that, Carl? You ready to roll?
Yeah, let me bring it up here. Okay. What I'm going to talk about is I approach things a little bit differently from the way that Dave does. I look at things from the perspective of what is it going to take to close the sale? What is it going to take to win the proposal? And I sort of work back from there. So Dave tends to approach things from how do you identify and pursue your leads. So he comes at it from the front end. I come at it from the back end. But we both meet in the middle and have the same problem, same thing that we need to address, and that is that you need to be ready to win before the RFP is released. And from my perspective, in terms of closing the sale with a proposal, the reason you need that is because you need to have an information advantage. An information advantage is what drives a winning proposal. Okay, and an information advantage means that you know more about the customer's needs, you know more about their preferences, you know more about the scope of work, you know more about what it's going to take to do the job and how to price it, okay, so that you can turn that knowledge into a proposal that has a competitive advantage. The problem is that if you wait until you have the RFP in hand, you're just not going to be able to get that kind of information. You won't have enough time to get it, and a lot of customers won't even talk to you at that level once the RFP is out. So you need to be in position to win when the RFP is released, and if you're not, then there's a good chance that you've already lost. Okay, so what we developed is as part of our overall process for winning proposals is something called readiness reviews. And readiness reviews is a methodology that takes you from lead identification and helps get you in the position to win. So what are these readiness review things? Basically, it's bringing structure to the lead pursuit, bringing structure to that critical pre-RFP process, because you will hear a lot of people talk about how important it is to start before the RFP is released. You will hear almost nobody talk about how you actually do that. So readiness reviews are how you do that. They're the structure. And basically it's just a series of reviews, okay? Each review has a list of questions, goals, and action items that you need to accomplish. And as you move through the series of reviews, you're able to track your progress towards becoming ready to win at RFP release. The way we developed it was we worked backwards. Instead of looking at the lead and saying, okay, we've got this lead, now what do we do with it? We looked at it from the perspective of what is it going to take to win the proposal? What do we need to be able to say? What do we need to have in there? And then we looked at it backwards and said, okay, now where do we get that from? And so if you need to have the winning team and the right subcontractors, then in order to get there, you need to identify them. In order to identify them, you have to do some sort of competitive assessment. Before you do the competitive assessment, you got to know who the incumbent is and what other companies do business at the customer. And you're able, once you start working backwards, you start to become able to piece these things together, all the things you need to do in order to accomplish that winning proposal. And then what we do is we take and we allocate them to 4 reviews. We call the reviews lead identification, qualification, intelligence, and bid preparation. The names aren't important, because a lot of times when I'm doing a process presentation, I'll see people start to try and write these things down at this point, and they're writing furiously. The names don't matter. All that matters is that you have some reviews. In fact, the number 4 isn't even magical. It just ends up being really convenient. So you've got 4 reviews, and that means that you need 4 sets of questions, action items, and goals. In order to conduct the readiness review, we put together these 4 sets, and what we do is we're looking at what it's going to take to win the proposal. But when we do the reviews, you have to realize that you can't always get the information that you want to have. what's important about the readiness review process is that it tells you the things to look for. You may not get them all. In fact, it's set up to where I can pretty confidently say that you're not going to be able to answer every question in every readiness review. That's not the goal. The goal is it sufficient? Have you tried? Have you leveraged every resource available to you to be as best prepared as you can possibly be? And most importantly, will you be ready to win at RFP release? Because there's 4 reviews. So during the first review, we're way ahead of RFP release. But during the second, we're a little bit closer. And during the third, we're even closer. And by the fourth, it's right around the corner. And we want to make sure that we're on the right track to being ready to review. And we ready to win. And we need some way to be able to predict that. And that's one of the things that readiness reviews give you. So if you look at it this way, you're basically taking that whole pre-RFP process and dividing it up, allocating it evenly so that you have time in between the reviews to gather the information to achieve to answer the questions and achieve the goals and action items. Then you hold the review so that you can assess your progress, and then you move on to the next one. So when you look at it from the back end, we're working towards gathering everything that we need to sit down and write the winning proposal. And then we spread those needs across the 4 reviews. So when we sit down and do the reviews, there's a series of questions that the reviewer needs to ask. And those questions are things like, do you understand what it's going to take to win? Are you on track at your current rate of progress to be in position to win? Have you run into a stumbling block? Is there an issue or a challenge that you can't get around? Do you need to bring in more resources? Do you need to try something different? And there are also going to be questions that the reviewer is going to have about the lead or the pursuit. And so you might write in some additional questions, things that are very specific to your company, your business unit, or that opportunity or that customer. And then the reviewer may see some things that need to be done, so they can add them in. Okay, but most importantly, you're trying to get some guidance and some help for the people doing the pursuit. So one of the things, the reviewer is usually a senior person and an executive in the company. So that person may, because of their experience and position, be able to make some recommendations, and provide some help, not just do a critical review, but do a helpful review, and that's really what readiness reviews are supposed to be.
Hey, Carl, what I love about this is one of my favorite things is that when the RFP hits, it's a high level of craziness, because usually there you have dates certain that are happening, and you have things that are necessary to have done. If you're doing this pre-RFP and you're kind of working your way there, by the time the RFP actually lands, you have such a handle on what's happening that it makes it so much easier to be able to do that response. And then you will have unknowns. There's no way that you can cover everything, even if you're completely baked in. There's still some level of review that's necessary to be able to figure out if there's any holes or there any gaps. And that's where I love the way that Carl approaches this. And while he does it he does it from the proposal side, it's woven in so well with being able to potentially go back to the person that's responsible, especially beforehand, to say, hey, as we're preparing for this RFP that's supposed to come out, what should we be looking for, and what are the ways that what are you looking for, and how can we potentially be able to position ourselves, or at least understand what you're looking for better, so we have the best answers and have the most complete solution for you. And that can happen beforehand, and then afterwards, what Carl was talking about in that review process with the senior management, being able to get buy-in from them on the processes that are necessary to be able to succeed too. So it's great. I love it. Thanks, Carl.
Yeah, a lot of this actually came out of frustration. Earlier in my career, I'd be working in a company and they'd come to me and say, okay, you're the proposal guy, so here's an RFP, write us a proposal. And so I'd take a look at the RFP and I'd start asking questions, simple questions like, would the customer prefer it this way or prefer it that way? And a lot of times I'd get no answer. And I'd ask more questions and couldn't get any answers. And a lot of these questions are really critical to being able to write, directly to, saying how you're going to fulfill what the customer wants. And so not being able to get answers to those questions for so many years, when I finally sat down and developed the must-win process, one of the things that I did was I made it a process that would deliver the information that you need to write that critical winning proposal. One of the side effects out of the readiness reviews is that once you create a list of questions, goals, and action items, and then you hold your reviews, one of the things that we advise companies to do, and this is all part of the must-win process that we developed and is available from our website. But one of the things that we do is we score each of those questions, and we use this really simple red, yellow, green scale. So we look at each of the questions, and the goal might be, have you completed your competitive assessment? And at the readiness review, that would get scored as red, yellow, green. Green, it was done well. Yellow, it was done, but it's got some problems. And red, it either was done extremely poorly or not done at all. If you convert red, yellow, and green into numbers, you end up getting the basis for some really interesting metrics and analysis that you can do. First off, you can spot trends. You can look at your pursuit, and you can see whether you're moving towards green or whether you're moving towards red. So in the first review, it's the first review. Maybe a lot comes up red. You're not ready. It surprised you. But you want to see by the third and fourth review those reds turning to yellows, turning to greens. What you don't want to see is a lead that starts off with everything green because we expected it, and so at the very beginning we were able to answer everything, and then we sort of got distracted by the fire of the moment, and come the third and fourth review, those greens have slipped into yellows, and now we have some reds showing up. You don't want to go into RFP release like that. And what tends to happen in a lot of companies is that critical time that you have between when you become aware of an opportunity and when the RFP comes out, it tends to disappear on you because you get distracted, and you don't necessarily gather all the information that you should have. Readiness reviews not only give you structure, but they give you a way to actually measure your progress and make sure that everybody's staying on top of what they should. It also gives you a really useful tool for doing bid, no bid decisions. If you get to your fourth readiness review, the last review, and you're seeing a lot of yellow and too many reds, you might just want to pull the plug on that bid. You're not ready for it. You're not in position to win. And so you actually get hard data that you can use to make your bid decisions. And what I've found is that makes the bid decisions a whole lot more effective, because instead of looking like you're feeling like you're walking away from a lead or an opportunity, once you see those yellows and reds, you realize that, yeah, this is the sort of opportunity that you should walk away from. On the other hand, if you see things, if it's predominantly green, then you feel a whole lot more confident about going in and putting the effort into the proposal that it's going to take. And when you convert those reds, yellow, and greens into numbers, 0 through 3, okay, now we can actually quantify not only the readiness of a particular pursuit, but if we do all of our pursuits this way, then we can start spotting things like if our teaming plans aren't together by the second readiness review, how does that impact our win ratio? Are we more or less likely to win if we have influenced the RFP or not? That question might sound obvious, but it's not really. What we found since implementing this is that a lot of the things that impact your win rate are surprising. And some of the things that you might assume impact it actually have far less impact than you would think. And some of the minor things end up really driving it. But you really don't know that until you quantify it. And the readiness review process gives that to you without any extra work, because you've already done the reviews in order to win the pursuit. Now if you just simply write down the review scores and convert them into numbers, you've got that kind of hard metrics data to work with. All right, so that's the readiness review process and how we approach that critical pre-RFP period. When you combine the reports and analysis that ISI Federal does in terms of identifying leads and contacts and sources of information, when you combine that with something like the readiness review process to bring structure to what you do with your leads once you've got them, you dramatically increase your ability to win the leads that you find. And when you're finding more of them because you're working with somebody like ISI Federal, you want to make sure that you're actually capturing those leads and turning them into business and doing it in a well thought through structured approach. Back to you, David, if you're ready.
That's great. I really appreciate it. And in fact, let me get back to there we go, my screen. Are you seeing my screen there, Carl?
Yeah.
Should be good. Excellent. Well, we appreciate that. And one of the things I really want to reinforce about what Carl is talking about, and there's really there's no one way per se to respond to all proposals, and that it all becomes very specific to the people that are responsible for purchasing and understanding their roles as you go through that process. And one of the things that we would like to do, and this, hopefully there's some high-level stuff there for you as well, but everything starts with getting smart. And if you go back to what Carl was talking about and getting smart about the customer's requirements and things like that, I do look at it from the relationship standpoint, but don't ignore the fact that even if you don't have a relationship in place, you still can play a role in being able to influence that. But you've got to know your positioning. You've got to understand your positioning. I like to look at it from a positioning of relationship, and Carl likes to look at it from a position of where are we in the RFP process. And I think they weave together so nice, because everything gets turned over into an RFP at some point, unless you can sole source it. And even then, you still have some components there that you can help them understand. So one of the things that's really critically important about this process when you're talking about the federal buyers is that there are 85,000 of them out there that could execute a contract with you at any given time. When we start with it, we always have our questions revolve around the who, and I'm not talking about Pete Townsend and his gang. I'm talking about specifically, who do you need to know, who needs to like you, who buys what you sell, who's buying from your competition, and then you can start to develop the how you're going to build that relationship, how you're going to respond to these proposals and RFPs and requests for quotes, anything. Any kind of interaction revolves around how you're positioned with that particular buyer. And by no means am I saying to ignore any of them. In fact, I want to know every single one that we can and be able to develop those relationships, and it can be done. And one of the things that we do is we look at the questions that were here. Glenn, you're here with FSG Group. Real quick, I'm going to pop you off. Hey, Glenn, are you around? Glenn McGraw? Not sure if he has his mic turned on or not. Anyway, Glenn is here. Learning about the procurement process is important to him. And I wanted to see if we covered some of that. Glenn, if you're there, you can just pop up anytime. Steve has a question. Hang on a second, and I'll get to that. All right, here we go. Nice presentation. So getting to project managers, any advice on how to get through with an introduction to the firm when there's no relationship to leverage within an agency nor experience to showcase? Email, phone calls probably won't do it. Ideas? Hey, Steve, hang on one second. I'm going to unmute you. You there? Steve? Stern? I think he's on the other line. Steve, you around? To answer your question, and then this will be part of the response. Project managers and program managers are assembled within those groups of decision makers. So what we like to do is we like to access the ones that we can get to. And if we can understand where they are in the food chain, then you can understand where they are in your approach. Most likely your program managers and project managers are mid-level or lower mid-level management. So if you come to them top down, you don't have to go to the administrator or have a relationship with the administrator. You can create a referral for yourself by knowing who you want to get to by contacting the contracting officer and then going over the head of the person that's responsible on the other side of the fence. It works very well, and we can certainly work with you to help understand that process. There was another question about where we get our information from Sarah, and as I mentioned before, a lot of this is public information that we assemble and we aggregate so that we make it make sense. And one of the things that we do, since you're looking for the right contact, Sarah, is we do revolve around the who. Who is responsible for these? And we have a way to be able to jumpstart your 2013. We call it Marketing Essentials 2013, and this is so you can understand your competition and how they're winning. You can get to the opportunities before they hit the street by getting to these people first, and then it's really about finding the who is involved in that. What we like to do is we have a program that we break down all these things for you so that we can show you the agency spending, the primes and their contacts, the people that are already winning. These are your potential teaming partners, as Carl was talking about before. You will identify a ton of people that you have the potential to be able to team with, or that you know that you're going to go head-to-head competition with. Sometimes they'll be the same people from time to time. So these are the things that are most important. Getting your competitors' contacts and going after them and building those relationships. Being first choice for second place. The recommended action steps for your federal strategy so that you're not just throwing stuff against the wall or following somebody else's trend or being stuck in the bureaucracy, which a lot of you folks are stuck in right this minute. So this is regularly $4,500. What we do for the webinars is we offer those for $3,000, and we have a super webinar special in conjunction with what Carl does. And that's because you need both. You need the business development approach, and you need the response approach. Every one of these is very important to your company and being able to differentiate yourself in your marketplace and get ahead of those competitors. On the one side, we give a comprehensive analysis of your market going into those agency spends and the who is involved, and then capture planning does the how to respond, how to set yourself up for a great response, and being able to know whether or not you should bid at all. Most of the time, you should be knowing this early. If you can say, hey, I'm not going to bid on that early, I'm going to pass on that because I think it's baked for our competition, or we don't have the presence, we don't have the response, we don't have the team in place in order to respond effectively and to be able to create this. So what we've done is we supply both of those for $5,000, and that includes an entire year of captureplanning.com on the corporate side. And tell us about that, because it's up to 100 people, right? Isn't that right, Carl? Tell us about the Capture Planning subscription.
What it does is it gives you access to the knowledge base where we have the documentation of the process, and the readiness reviews are just a portion of the process. But when I describe things like the questions, the goals, and the action items, well, we've taken that a step further in our process documentation. You can actually use our list of questions, goals, and action items to guide you through. So we give all that to you. And with the corporate subscription, it's not just one person like your proposal person that gets access. It's typically your entire company. I mean, 100 people covers a lot. So it's all of your project managers, it's all of your executives, and it helps get everybody on the same page regarding what and how and the things that you need to do in order to capture your proposals. So it brings structure to it so that everybody knows what all of the steps are, and it brings guidance and online training to help them understand how to go about it.
And that, so you can do an individual subscription for $500, and everybody should go there. You have more free stuff there that everybody should see, and you can see the wealth of knowledge that Carl's had for doing proposals for many, many, many years, and it's an impressive process and all those and everything in that. Real quick, I know we're kind of running a little bit behind here. We had a lot of information today, and my information is right here. You can contact me directly. You can contact Carl directly and be able to, if you have any questions for those things. I know we had a couple of other questions that we probably can't get to, and so I'll respond to those directly, individually. And we really appreciate you guys joining us. We'll be dealing with establishing your capability statements and setting yourself up probably in January. December is going to be a light month because it usually is a really light month for us. So, we'll still have our webinar, and we'll look into some specifics that you guys would like us to look into. Try to get it all in today. Sorry, we're running a little bit behind, but we certainly appreciate everybody being here, and we look forward to the next every third Tuesday at 11 a.m. is when we perform these, and hopefully we can help you in some form or fashion, and we all